for you. All right. Good evening, everyone. The Platteville Journal of the Main Street Program welcome you to the 2015 Platteville School Board Candidate Forum. Tonight's forum is intended to help Platteville School District voters make an informed choice in the April 7th election, actually 3 choices, because the election will choose 3 school board members from these 5 candidates plus an additional candidate who is not here tonight. Our intention tonight is to guide a conversation among the 3 candidates into city issues and how those candidates feel about these issues. These questions were raised during journal coverage of city government as well as emailed questions from journal readers. We will start tonight by introducing 5 of the 6 candidates and asking them what they feel the most important issue of this campaign is, and we will conclude by asking each candidate why we voters should vote for that candidate. And in between, we'll cover the issues in this campaign and perhaps even issues that the candidates themselves bring up. There are no formal time limits for answers, but I would ask each of the candidates to answer completely but succinctly. The one candidate who is not here is Jamie Brogley. She is a challenger for the school board. She was not able to make it due to illness tonight. The candidates who are here are Eric Fatzinger, Colleen McCabe, Steve Overshaw, Kurt Timlin, and Matt Solinsky. And the first question I will ask is for each of them to introduce themselves and answer the question of why they're running. We'll start with Eric.
Okay. I'm Eric Fatzinger. Returned to the city about 5 years ago after serving in the military for a while, and then returned home after retirement. I was born and raised in Platteville, went to Platteville High School and University of Wisconsin-Platteville. The most important issue for us facing us right now in school as an incumbent to the school board is probably budget. State funding is going down. That's not a new thing. It's been going on probably since the late 90s, early 2000s. Budgets get tighter all the time as the economy goes. But for us, that's very important. And probably the biggest part of the budget piece is how we maintain a quality education. And part of that is the button I'm wearing is talking about voting, not just for the school board and city council members coming up on the 7th and other state races like the state Supreme Court, things like the referendum for the school. And that's a very important piece of meeting our budgetary requirements and making sure we provide a quality education to our kids, both in terms of physical plant and in how we educate them and where and how we do that. So I think that's the most important issue we face in the near term, to make sure we've got the right facilities and the right kind of things to do for our kids to make sure that they get the proper education.
Okay, and you were running for your 2nd term, correct?
Correct.
So you were elected in 2012?
Yes.
Before I got here. Okay.
Yep.
Colleen.
Well, I'm Colleen McCabe, and I'm running mainly because I think many things have prepared me for this position, and it's time that I feel I'm ready for the leadership that it takes to help a district, help a town meet the needs of its constituents, whether that be the students, whether that be the staff, or whether that be administration, or the community in and of itself, maintaining a quality education. As a educator myself, a K-12 educator, and then now a professor at a university, and the university here in the School of Education, and in specifically health and physical education. I think there are a lot of different things, not just health and wellness issues that our district is facing, but yes, budgetary issues. But that's always going to be there. I think the quality of education has always been high. When we chose to come and raise a family in this district, it was in big part because of the schools. I left the school district that I taught at to come here to this district. So I value the quality education here, and I want to be a positive impact on it.
Okay, thanks. Steve, you are also an incumbent.
Yes. Yes, I'm Steve Overshaw, and I am an incumbent. This will be my 11th time running for this position. I have served on the board for the past 30 years, and we were just talking before the meeting that I moved to Platteville 41 years ago. So a lot has happened in that period of time. When I think about issues challenging the district, as Colleen and Eric have both talked about, it's budget. And I certainly have lived through lots of the history of the budget dilemma. I guess is maybe the best way to describe it here in Wisconsin. it's a bigger issue than budget. I think it's a bigger issue in budget in that dollars are always going to be an issue. How do we stretch those dollars to get the maximum impact for us, for the kids in our district, our schools in general, to maintain them over time? And how do we try to keep that eye looking forward about what it is that is most important to people in Platteville, as well as to meet the needs of kids going through our K-12 system? And I guess I've tried to keep that in mind all of the years that I've been on the Board of Education. I think the role of the board is to be that steward of tax dollars, meeting the needs of the kids, the staff, and the community, and trying to come up with a reasonable balance of that on each and every year. And that's the ongoing challenge. And challenge I look forward to the opportunity to serve another 3 years. As Eric mentioned earlier, we got the referendum coming up, at the soon, and it's at the same time that we're looking forward in, will our facilities meet the needs of children currently in our system and those entering our system in the next 20 years?
Okay, thanks. Kurt.
My name's Kurt Timlin. I'm a business owner here in town. I've been back in town now for approximately 18 years. Prior to moving back to town, my wife and I lived in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Rockford, Illinois. I have 2 kids currently involved in the district, and they're getting a little bit older, and I feel like I have time now that I can devote to different things, and I feel like my experience in business would help out with some things. I also feel that my wife and I, both being from Platteville, were well equipped when we left these schools, and they were in good shape when we left. We got a good education here. We were well prepared to go on to post-secondary education. She went to UW-Madison, graduated from there. I went to UW-Stout, graduated from there. So we were both well prepared, and I want to see my kids be that prepared when they leave here. And I think that there's some good things going on. I think there's always a lot that we can improve on. And community-wise, I think that the community could always embrace the schools a little bit more also. I don't believe the most important thing is the bricks and mortar. I believe the most important thing is our students that are in those buildings. And then the other largest asset, I believe, is the people educating those students. And I think that sometimes those things get mixed up, and I believe that sometimes the dollars and cents can override that. And I think that sometimes we need to think a little bit outside of the box, and sometimes it's time maybe to look at change and to think outside of the box. And I'd like to think that sometimes I can be that person that thinks outside of the box and presents different things.
Okay, thanks. Matt.
I'm Matt Zielinski. I work at the university with Colleen as well. One of the reasons I chose to run was just kind of the timing of it, looking at, I have a young son in kindergarten, and then I have another son who will be 2 here in a couple weeks. And just knowing that I'll be involved in the district for about the next 20 years or so, knowing that this is the time that I really want to step up and make sure that I was a part of the discussion, make sure that I was part of the decision making, and help focus on our district for the future. As many of the candidates have talked about before, budget being one of the major concerns as we look at whether it be the political climate in the state of Wisconsin, the funding structure in the state of Wisconsin. Again, looking at ways to be able to support our students, support our staff, and support the district in a way that students are still getting a quality education here in our district. I'm a product of public education. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin during a time where the schools were amazing, and they still are. Came to UW-Platteville and did my education here and met my wife here. And we too chose to stay here because of the quality education. My wife got a position here in town, has been teaching here for about 10 years. And we decided to start a family and stay here because of the quality education. And that was something that was important to us. We both come from a long line of educators, both K through 12 and higher ed. And so with my work at the university, I too believe that I have a lot to bring to this position. I work every day with budgets, I work every day with policies and procedures, and I work every day with the youth in our community. So that's why I'm running, and that's what I think I can bring to the table.
Okay. Before we go on, I think I'm going to tell the cameraman possibly to move the camera up so that the sound gets picked up a little better. And the other thing is to remind him that we have to change it every 20 minutes. So, all right. Now that we've done the introductions, we're going to ask the next question, which we'll start with Colleen. And the question is, what do you believe is the most important issue in this campaign, and what is your position on it?
Well, I think the referendum, budget keeps coming up, but really, the referendum is the thing that's most on the forefront. As far as my position, I support it. I think we need to continue to create the environments that our students need to learn to develop the skills needed in the worlds they'll be facing. Sometimes it's hard to be futuristic in your planning, but this is a perfect time for that. As far as the way in which our debt service will be retired, and really there won't be that shock value to your tax dollar or your tax bill because of a steady state that we have the opportunity to take advantage of that. Letting that lapse and giving people time to kind of feel a little better about their tax bill, and then going to referendum would be much more difficult. So the time is right for two reasons. Well, because there's a need. I look at our science labs, and I did walk through the science labs the other day. I went into Dean Hoosier's classroom and I looked around a little bit, asked her some questions, and been looking at the blueprints that have been preliminary drawn up, and there are things that need to change. And I think it's time, and I think the referendum is well needed at this point in time. So I
Okay.
support it.
Sorry to cut you off there, Steve.
That's a very difficult question. I think as my response was earlier, it's a blend of things. And certainly the budget's an issue, the referendum's an issue. And I think the other thing that we really haven't talked much tonight now is about the political climate and what is happening on a state and national level, expectations on our districts to reprioritize the limited resources they send us, and now we're moving in this direction. And so I can't say it's a single issue, but I see those as kind of the big three. And how do we balance as much as we can to get the bang for our buck from our tax dollar, to make our facilities and educational programs as vibrant as they can be, and being very aware of the political climate both at a state and national level, as they really direct a number of things that we do, and how do we best be in compliance yet meet the needs of our kids and our community.
Okay. Kurt.
I definitely believe one of the biggest things in the election here is definitely the referendum and the budget. Two things, I guess you would have to say. The referendum, how do I feel on the referendum? To be blatantly honest about it, I am not for the referendum. I'm probably going to be one of the few that admits to that, but I'm not for the referendum in its current state. I'm for a referendum potentially for a lesser dollar figure. I don't believe that we are hurting our education by taking some of that away. I believe that we are showing financial responsibility. We have facilities that are already there. We do need to update some facilities, there's no doubt about it. The STEM thing is a huge thing. I completely agree with that. I love mathematics, I love the science, and those two things kind of go hand in hand. Could we use some updates there? We sure could. But some of the stuff I can't agree with because I feel like we could better manage some of our facilities. We have excess classrooms sitting at our high school that aren't being used. We have excess inventory in other places, and then yet we want to add on to a facility. I have a tough time supporting that. Our high school, when I was here, granted that was a lot of years ago, had over 800 students in it at that time, and it was 2/3 the size it is now. So I believe that, once again, maybe we have to think outside the box, maybe we have some growing pains in adjusting some things, but I believe we could adjust to it, and I believe we could show some financial responsibility back by doing that to our community at large. I think it's going to be a tough pill for the majority of the community to swallow. It's not a $17 million referendum, but it's a $17 million project, in essence, 16.6 and you round up. But so I think that's a tough pill to swallow, and I believe especially in a time when we are facing the cuts coming out of Madison and so forth, with higher qualifications expected from the students coming out of the schools. So that's my opinion.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold on, you know, what's most important, what we feel is the biggest issue on why we're running versus maybe what the community thinks. And I think as the community looks at us as candidates, they're going to look at what is our stance on the referendum. That's what they've heard about, and that's, you know, kind of what they're going to the polls for. But I think hopefully we're able to, as candidates, connect with voters and talk with them about why, you know, what we have in our back pocket, what we can offer the district, and how we can advocate for all the members in our community. And so for me, you know, I think the referendum is a big part of that. And I think for me, I am a supporter of the referendum, and proud to say that I support that. I think it's a wonderful time to do that. I think looking at the facilities and the reports and the consulting firm that came in, I've actually worked with that consulting firm, and I have a lot of respect for the work that they do. They've done work on campus with me. You know, and I think they've done a good job of identifying the certain stages and different steps that we can take along the way for the referendum, and they've identified kind of the needs and some of the space issues that we have, and so I support that. Obviously, you know, the safe and secure entrances is a major one, and I've talked with people in the community before about even as the spouse of a teacher, there's times I've gone to the schools to either drop something off or whatever, and I've been able to just get in, or I've been able to buzz in, and it's at a building where somebody doesn't know me, but they buzzed me in just because, you know, I looked okay, kind of a thing. And so I think that's an important thing for me. You know, we talked about STEM, especially with the connections to the university, and that being such a growing program at the university. I think that's important as well. And again, political climate is a big one. I think a lot of people in the community really want to make sure that their voice is heard. I think we've had a really great school board in the past and has done a good job of that, but wanting to continue to maintain and make sure that people in all areas of our community feel like their voice is being heard, all the way from you know, our older citizens in Platteville that don't have children in the schools, to our rural voters, to parents, to our teachers, making sure that they have a voice at the table and that we're willing to listen to that.
Okay, Eric.
Well, I think a lot of interesting comments, a lot of good comments across the table. It's kind of nice going last sometimes. I think,
We can fix that.
yes, I know. I guess the biggest issue facing us, the most important thing facing us, is where do we go in the future? And is the future tomorrow, or is it next week, or is it 20 years from now? And I think based on everything that has been mentioned so far in terms of budgets and constraints and political climates, that's all true. The referendum is the most important single issue, but that's an outcome of those other issues. As Steve said, it's the big three, but for us it boils down to where do we want to go in the future. And I sat on the committee that helped bring in the architect, spent a year working with the architect and going through what they recommended and how do we shape that to bring it to the full board. I guess I'm at a loss to understand why anyone who goes through that paperwork and goes through that information in detail wouldn't support the future of our schools as laid out by the architect and the board in trimming that down to what we believe is the bare necessities for the future of our schools. And that includes the kids, the teachers, and the facilities. So without the facilities, you can't teach very well. Without the teachers, you can't teach at all. And without kids, there's no reason to be there. But you still got to have a place to do it that's safe and meets their needs and allows us to move into the future. The STEM piece. In 1979, I was a senior at Platteville High School, and the first computers came to Platteville High School. They didn't know what to do with them. They were TRS Tandies, TRS 80s. And so the science department gave them myself and another student, said, play with these and figure out what it is we're supposed to do with them. That was STEM in the 1970s and 80s. We've come a long way, but we got a long way to go because, as Colleen said, if you go up and look at our facilities, they frankly haven't changed a whole lot since the 1980s. So I think that's our biggest important issue, is getting the referendum passed. I don't think giving up what it amounts to probably going out to dinner every other week in a year in terms of the amount of money we're going to get back. I'm a taxpayer too. I own property in the township, in the Platteville School District, and I pay a lot because it's not agricultural land, even though it's rural land. And I'm more than willing to give that up to make sure our schools are prepared for the future that we owe our kids. I don't have any kids. I'm probably not gonna be able to have kids in a little